Hey TCSTV viewers, it's Evelyn coming to you live from the camera store. Today we have a very big in-person audience in the camera store this morning. The lineup was going around the corner, and that's because we have Dave Brosha here in Calgary, coming from the Maritimes, from PEI, and he's Alberta born as well. But today we're going to be having his talk on watching the world, and you guys of course are watching from home as well as our in-person audience here today. I want to thank the TCSTV Live Dream team. They've been working hard since early in the morning to get all of this going. So we have Graham and Drew working behind the scenes, as well as all the other awesome camera store staff that are here today. This morning, we also wanted to let you know that you can join us in the chat if you want to ask questions from home. So make sure that you are logged in. If you're not and you still want to ask questions, you can email me, evelyn@thecamerastore.com, and we'll try to get as many as we can at the end of the presentation. I also want to mention that Sigma Canada has sponsored this event, and they are always supporting photographers. They've had a great relationship with Dave Brosha for many years, and we're just so pleased to be able to bring this to Calgary today, and to all of you at home. And big thanks to Danny Lee, who's here in the house today. And the camera store is doing a special promo. It's $50 off Sigma lenses. So if you're in Canada or you're in the store, you can save $50. If you're at home, you're going to want to email me, evelyn@thecamerastore.com, and I can send you the details on how you can get that special offer. But if you're not already familiar with Dave Brosha, he's passionate about a wide spectrum of photographic genres. He's proudly a fellow of the Canadian Royal Geographic Society, a Sigma Pro photographer, and the co-founder of the Offbeat photographic community. He offers lots of photographic workshops and tours across Canada and the world. So if you want to get to know him more, definitely check out his website for more details on how you can work with Dave Brosha. But welcome, Dave. Thanks so much for coming to the Camera Store.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, and thank you to the Camera Store and to Sigma. I'm so darn nervous right now. Russ, the manager here, he came up to me ahead of this, and he's like, do you still get nervous for stuff like this? Because I do a fair amount of speaking and leading workshops or whatever, and I still get the shakes every single time. I really do, and I really unfortunate the front row people, because if I projectile vomit here, you guys are going to get it first. But just thank you all for coming out. This is overwhelming. You don't know if 3 people are going to show up or 10 people, and to see all your faces and so many familiar faces that I've known for years is a really wonderful thing. I kind of got my start in speaking and doing this kind of stuff in Southern Alberta about a decade ago, and it's just, yeah, it feels like it's come full circle being here today. So just thank you all for coming out. And a huge thanks again to the Camera Store. I mean, I go right across the country, and I think these guys are the biggest builders of photo community in terms of a camera store out there. And Sigma, of course. They've been just fantastic to me over the years, and every image I've shot in the last decade has been with their lenses, and I love their stuff so much. Very quickly, who am I? In case you just randomly walked in the store. I live in Prince Edward Island. I'm father to 3 wonderful children. I have been a photographer now, I guess, for 21 years, which is crazy to say. I still feel like a newbie most days. And I love what I do, plain and simple. These talks, I never profess to be an expert in anything when I come out and speak to people. I just tell you my story and what I love shooting and how I do things, and hopefully some of it resonates with you as we go through today. So I've given so many talks over the years, and I've heard many talks from other people as well. And I take these talks seriously, because you're giving up part of your well-earned weekend time to come on out and listen to somebody blab at you for an hour. And I really try to just think, what would I like to hear? What do I want to know? And sometimes you go out and you hear a technical talk, and sometimes you hear a talk about composition or the art side of photography or inspiration. Well, this talk, I'm going to kind of break it up into 2 parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about just why. Why are we so drawn to this world of photography? Why do I think it's important? And I think it's important, it really is, both for us personally, but also for, I think, the greater good that it can do as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the why, but I am, on the second half, going to talk a little bit about the how, right? Just how you can go about and hopefully see the world around you a little differently. For those that don't know me, I'm not genre specific. I love everything in photography. I do landscape photography, I do wildlife, I do portraiture, I shoot weddings, I still do the odd family portrait session. I love abstract photography, you name it, I love it. I consider myself a person with a camera, not a landscape photographer or any one of those boxes or labels that we tend to put on each other. So the why. I've thought a lot about this. Why do we pick up the camera? And I think we all come into photography for different reasons. I myself, through the first half of my life, I'm now 45, but the first half of my life, I don't think I really knew what I loved to do, right? You're just figuring things out. You bounce around. I went to college, took English Lit in college. I went over to Taiwan and taught for a year, ended up climbing telephone poles for a while. Kind of just bounced around, but like I didn't have a passion. I didn't have a hobby. I liked things, but just didn't really have that thing that kind of clicked in my brain. For me, though, I picked up the camera for the first time almost by accident. I bought a camera back in 2002. Now, I, of course, picked up cameras before that. My mom gave me a Pentax back, I think when I was 17 or 18. I shot film for a little bit, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But I bought a camera in 2002 because I was moving up to the Arctic, Nunavut, for work up there. And being up there, I just knew it was going to be unique. I knew it was going to be different. And I wanted a way to be able to just share that with people back home. And so I started really for this reason, that word, document. I mean, I don't think I thought of it in terms of artistry or the artistic side of photography or creativity. For me, it was just a simple way to kind of showcase what I was experiencing and what I saw and what I encountered en route. And I knew up there was going to be really, really unique. That might be one of the first pictures I ever took. And right now you're wondering, why the heck did we come out to this talk? This was shot in 2003, and it's one of the first photos I ever put on my Flickr account. I signed up for a Flickr account way back in 2002 or 2003, and I was just thrilled with this picture at the time. This was my Fuji digital camera that I bought at the time. I think it was 2 megapixels, and I was just like, I'm documenting my world. This is my title for it on Flickr. Arctic char in kitchen sink. But I loved documentary photographers, and I was just documenting my world. And you can see right here that this has 0 faves and 1 comment. and this is about 20 years later. So it didn't really resonate with people at the time. But this was, I show this as kind of a weird example. This is the reason why I started, was to just do simple little stuff like this. And I'm sure many of you can relate, right? There's a reason why we go and are drawn to buy a camera the first time. A lot of people in the world aren't. The people in this room are. And maybe you just love kind of getting outside with it, or maybe you love pressing that button and knowing that you're creating something or showcasing something to your family or friends, or just for your own personal reasons. I love to document. And so over time, my documentation kind of has gone in many different directions. I love documenting my travels. I love documenting my family, just little moments in their life. I like documenting just the world around me. And in fact, photography has made me love the world around me. And not that I didn't love it before, but I don't think I really appreciated all the nuances of the beauty of nature until I picked up a camera, right? Because that camera forces you to pay attention. It forces you to slow down and just really look at the world around you. And I love documenting everything. People, place. This is a recent documentary photo that I did in Halifax about 4 or 5 months ago. Very simplistic, but it's just the things that we see. I love that we can go capture them. And I love that photography can be anything you want it to be. It can be an Arctic char in a kitchen sink. It could be your family, your friends, your life, or it could just be the exploration of the world around you. So aside from documentation, and I didn't realize this when I first bought a camera, but the second half of the equation for me is I realized very quickly I like this too, that a camera can be a tool to help you create as well, right? And I really think a lot of people are drawn into one of those 2 categories in photography, documentation or creation. What do I like to create? Well, I like to, when I first picked up that camera, it was just kind of snapping stuff around me. But after a while, I realized that through technique, through equipment, through just inspiration and vision, you could go out and just make the world whatever you wanted it to be. So I like creating portraits of people. I love environmental portraiture. I love just getting weird out there in nature with people and just seeing what I can come up with. But also, so I think a lot of people think creativity in photography might be limited to more of this stuff. But I really think in landscape photography and nature photography, we can choose a documentation approach, or we could choose a creative approach in nature photography as well. Both of these I would call not so much documentary nature photographs, but creations. And I'll explain why. The one on the left, that is a scene that I saw. This is Iceland, and it's a chunk of ice and just a wave rushing in under it. But through a creative choice of shutter speed and how I chose to set this up, it gives it an effect that isn't quite what our eye sees, right? It's a little bit different. I created that. The one on the right is just very simple. It's telling a person, that's the great Canmore photographer Callie April. I just asked her to go sit on this place because I saw the moon up there and I felt like it needed something else. It's a creation as well, right? There's a lot of times I go out into nature and just click and see beautiful light and see beautiful scenes and just kind of try to represent it as closely to the eye as I see it. Other times I like to create. So those two words, they really represent what I do, document and create. Now, you might be thinking right now to yourself, well, what category do I more fall into? What am I more drawn into? Because some people hate creating. They really do. I have met some very passionate photographers who just despise the idea of creation in photography. That's okay, right? Some people just love to document. They really like to take that photojournalistic approach of the world around them. But for me, I realize I'm very much a 50-50 person. I love both sides of that equation. Sometimes I need this. It's like something just pulsing through your blood. You get cranky if you don't go out and do this, right? Sometimes I find myself sitting there and I'm like, oh gosh, I haven't created in a while. I haven't gone out there and just captured something that I'm thrilled with. So I'm gonna just figure something out. And I love that. I love that I feel that urge. Because, again, for the first half of my life, I didn't so much have that urge. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And creation can be many different things, right? Creation can be just going out and in 1/3 of a second, abstracting your world and creating. This is a creation. That's not a documentation to me. Or a creation could be a really elaborate project. This is a series that I photographed 2 years ago that was, I think, a total of 10 different photo shoots over a month, creating a whole series of images, kind of playing with the idea of a couple through time. And we shot them in many different scenes, many different eras. It's a creation. This is far from reality, but it's also photography, and I love it. It's creating with the world around you. So I love creating, but sometimes I really need to do this. I don't have that urge to go out and create. Sometimes I want to be more meditative, reflective, right? Just go out and be. And I love that component of photography too, right? To go sit out in a park, or I'm a Prince Edward Island boy now, so I love going down to the ocean and just sitting on the shoreline, taking it all in. And sometimes you see something out of that process, and sometimes you don't, and that's okay. But I find photography such a wonderful tool to allow us to do that. This, to me, is a documentation. It's a very simple photograph, but I love it. This is, have any of you ever been to a well-known place called Peggy's Cove in Nova Scotia? Peggy's Cove is probably the most famous landscape location on the East Coast. It's our Lake Louise, right? It's that place where you go and it's been shot a million times, and a really scenic lighthouse. And I love that lighthouse, and I've shot that lighthouse many, many times. But this particular day, I went in with the goal of sitting down, slowing down, and just watching. And this picture came out of it. This is right next to the lighthouse. And I'll tell you what, you can love this photograph or hate it. It doesn't matter to me, but I love it because it's something different in that location. And to me, that's a personal win for myself, right? And really, we shoot for ourselves. I think nobody else. And those wins should really matter to us. I'm going to do some minor preaching here, just for a few minutes. So kind of just to reinforce what I just said, I really do think photography has both sides of that equation, reactive and proactive. To me, proactive is putting thought into something, maybe conceptualizing something, maybe going out with the idea of creating in mind. Reacting to me is that idea of being that photojournalist on the street, or just going and capturing that magical slice of light that you come upon. And I love both sides of those equations. And I don't think we have to choose, right? I've heard photographers say, well, you should really conceptualize almost every shot that you take. And don't you find sometimes we as photographers try to sound so lofty in what we say? You read some things on websites and whatever, artist statements in photography, and I just shake my head at a lot of those, because a lot of them are telling you how you should see the world. I think how you see the world should be up to you. And I don't think you have to choose one way of seeing the world. I firmly believe in this. I think you could be a photographer and an artist. Some photographers hate using that word, artist. They're like, we're not artists. We just go out and document, right? Where's the artistry in that? I love considering the fact, only for me, not for anyone else. I'm not trying to sell anyone else on it. I love calling myself an artist because it puts me in a different brain frame when I'm out there. It makes me see the world differently. I think it's really important to find that thing that you love in photography, because let's face it, a lot of us spend a lot of money at this hobby, which the camera store is very happy about. But it's an expensive hobby by all means. And I see a lot of photographers out there that are frustrated, that don't seem like they're enjoying it. They think they should be doing something to some other person's expectations, or they see the work that somebody else is producing and they're like, well, that's what I got to create, and if I'm not creating it, I'm doing it wrong. I think you should just simply figure out what you love in photography and do that, and just avoid all the noise. And that takes time, right? When we first pick up the camera, I think we bounce around a bit, right? We don't know what we love. You go out and you shoot a landscape photograph, and then you walk down the city street and you shoot a street photography. And then you go and you maybe photograph a portrait. And maybe you hate one of those things. Well, stop doing it, right? Go find that other thing that you like. Bottom line, we as photographers have a voice. Each person in this room with their camera can go tell a different story, one that's inherently and uniquely personal to you. And I think that's such a beautiful gift that we have the ability to go do that. Not everyone in the world can, right? A lot of people cannot afford photography. We in this room are very privileged, I think, to be able to do it. And today, in the world of social media, that voice that you have through your camera can be shared far and wide. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that wasn't quite as possible, right? You had more gatekeepers in photography. There's very few people that could really get their images out there. Now, anybody with an iPhone, with a camera, a social media account, can have their voice put out to people around the world in seconds. And I think we should really give that some thought. What do you want your voice to be? What story do you want to tell with your photographs? Tell your stories, because stories make us all richer. I know probably about 25 people in this room right now, and I know the remarkable diversity of photographs that even these 25 people take. I know some of their story through the images they share, and I love that. It gives us little insights on other humans that we exist with, right? It takes us out of our own bubble. Think of how many times you have been inspired by somebody else's photographs, right? Or brought into a world that you never knew existed, or saw something out there, whether it be an animal, an event, a place, a location, a scene that you're like, wow, that exists in this world. How fantastic. Or look at that expression on that person's face. It makes us feel something. We all have these stories to share, and they do make us richer. Little digression. Diane Arbus. Any of you guys go to her exhibition, or the exhibition of her work here in Calgary? See, a couple hands up. Yesterday I had a free hour, and so I went over to, what's it called, Contemporary Calgary? What a beautiful space that is. I'd never been in that building before. And I'll be honest, I mean, I'd always heard of Diane's work. I never really studied it before. Well, I spent an hour yesterday walking through that exhibition, and there was maybe 100 different prints that she had made that were up. Most of them she had printed herself back in the day. And it was remarkable. Now, this was the only picture I took when I was there, because you're not allowed, ironically, to take photographs in the exhibition, but this was outside the exhibition, so I snuck it. I love this quote. I really believe there are things which nobody would see unless I photograph them. Very simple quote, but I love that. This is one of her photographs. I stole it off the internet. Hopefully her estate doesn't sue me. But this is what just a singular moment in time that any of us could happen upon. I mean, you might happen upon a very slim child with holding a grenade sometime in your life. But I love this because this picture right here, one of her most famous, if you submitted this to a photography competition, they'd probably tear it apart. Look, there's something coming out of the kid's head, right? It's not clean. It's not perfectly composed. The kid intersects with the tree a little bit, right? All these things we would nitpick if we look at it from that rules that we are taught perspective. Does that make that a less powerful photograph? Not for a second. It's a moment in time in our world. And the more you stare at it, the more that you just love it. Like even if you didn't notice the grenade in the hand, just the expression on the face and the clenched up hands and like look at his left hand. Like that's something out of a Stephen King movie. I love that. But there's just so much to appreciate there. It's a moment in the world around her that we would not have seen had she not taken that photograph and shared it. So let's go back to that quote. There are things which nobody would see unless I photograph them. I love that. I mean, that should actually be our mantra. Because a lot of us struggle with, well, what am I doing that's special or unique or different than somebody else? Well, you're seeing the world through your eyes. People, even if it's just one person out there, may not see that world unless you share it to them. Right? And if you impact even one person in that process, what a wonderful gift. Because we've all been impacted by other people's photographs. I love being impacted by other people's photographs. So I would just say, remember that Diane Arbus quote the next time you're looking for inspiration or questioning why you're out there doing it. All you have to do is tell your story of the world around you. Hopefully you learn and grow and get better doing it, but really you're just showing your perspective. Find that thing you love and don't give a beep, beep, beep what people think. I say that too because a lot of people I think in the world of photography really care what other people think. And they let that dictate how they shoot. I came from this world. I said that at the very start. I used to be a telephone technician up in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Every day I'd get up and I'd climb telephone poles and go document that world. But I had this photography thing on the side that I loved doing. This was my crew. There's me right in the middle. I'm just a baby face there. I still had hair, even though I'm still wearing a hat. But I would show these pictures sometimes to this crew around me, and I got a lot of weird looks. Like, what the heck are you doing? Why do you like doing that? Why do you like doing this? Right? I don't know. I just love doing it. That's that thing that makes me tick. And I used to really care about what other people thought. I would have it dictate how and what I shot. And I realized that if I stayed down that path, I wouldn't create stuff like this, right? This came out of I've told this story before. Some of you have heard this, but I went to Edmonton once and I bought 2 photography books, one by Annie Leibovitz, one by Joe McNally. And then the next week, I went back and kind of did this series. I'd never thought about doing anything like that before, but I just picked up inspiration from looking at their remarkable photographs. And I kind of said to myself, I was very much a landscape nature photographer at this time, I don't care what other people think. I'm going to try to go do that thing that I want to try. And I'm so glad I did. It took me on a whole different path. Don't play that compare game. We all do this, but don't, because it really will get you nowhere. What will others like? I recently shared this example at a talk in Prince Edward Island, but this is one of the very first landscape photographs I ever shot in Prince Edward Island. Originally from Alberta, my folks were from the East Coast. I moved to Prince Edward Island back in 2013, I believe. 2013, 10 years ago. And I was like, I'm going to go shoot landscape photographs here. And this is one of the first things I shot. And I'll be very honest with you guys in this room. I shot this because I knew it would get a reaction on social media. This is the kind of things that people click like to. They don't click like to a boring black and white picture of a dog at Peggy's Cove. Right? When I put that online, barely anyone clicked like to that. But I don't care, because nowadays, I love shooting the things that I love for me. So this is me 10 years ago. This is me today. These are the kind of little scenes that I love looking for when I'm out there in nature. And they're weird. They're quirky. They don't get likes on Facebook, I can guarantee you. But I love this stuff. I love it. It's me slowing down and just looking at the world around me. And to me, it's unique. It's unique to me. It inspires me. And that's the only thing that really matters when we pick up that camera. Impressing others is way less important than impressing yourself. It's not always easy to impress ourselves. To me, that's the fun part of this chase. I love going out, and you know that feeling you get when you're like, I shot something different today, right? Or I went to bloody Lake Louise and didn't shoot the same shot that 7 million people have shot before me, right? I looked for something different there. It's a great feeling when you're able to go out there and do that. I love the hunt for the weird bits in life. To me, that's what a lot of Diane Arbus's work is. She documented a lot of people in the world around her in New York City, but she documented cityscapes, she documented landscapes, she documented just quirky little bits that she saw along the way. And I love that. Part of the reason why she is famous, that her work is famous, is because she photographed uniqueness. She was different than the rest of the crowd. She looked for unique moments in the world. I think we all, as photographers, have to ask ourselves this question too. What's my truth? What do I love to do? What do I want to document? And realize that this can change over time. Anyone who knows me knows that I switch gears about every 6 months. I really do. I come up with a project, an idea, and I'm like all gung-ho for it. 6 months later, I'm like, nope, I'm on to the next thing. And I'm okay with that. That has kept me inspired for 20 years in photography. If I just had to go out and shoot landscape photographs using a filter and a big sky and a wide lens for 20 years, I'd probably be bored silly. But don't get me wrong, I love shooting that stuff, but I love shooting that in chunks and then moving on and figuring out the next thing that inspires me. I love both creating and I love the stuff of real life, and I really think there's a place for both in photography. I haven't been shooting enough of the real stuff for me lately. I think I've been more on the creating side. And for me, it just kind of, I realized that for the next 6 months, I want to switch gears and I want to go back to documenting. And I'll probably change in 6 months after that. So actually, where is it? Right here. Just yesterday, I bought a new camera. And I'm really excited about that. I've been a Canon guy for 20 years, and I bought a Fuji X-T5. Yeah, how many of you guys are Fuji people? Okay. For 20 years, I've been like, how many people are Canon people? Well, I still have a Canon R5. I love it. It's my bigger system. I'll go out and shoot landscapes and all that with it. But I realized that I wasn't shooting as much because I needed something small with me. And that stuff was bigger. And I just needed something really compact. So I have this like beautiful Sigma 30 millimeter lens on this thing. And last night I walked around Calgary for an hour and a half shooting with this thing just on the street. And it was one of the most fun, still covered under warranty, I think. But it was probably the most fun that I had in photography in a long time. It really was. Like, it was just the freedom I had with this thing. So light and so compact, and to just go out there and be able to shoot and just not overthink. I just stuck to that one lens, only because I only have that one lens right now. And I loved it, but I really, truly loved it. It was something that made me feel like I was capturing the true world around me again. I want to shoot more of these kind of pictures again. I shot a lot of this kind of stuff. This is just my own family, and this is my own daughter. And they're weird and technically maybe not the best. But I love them. They're moments, and they're just, to me, they're real. They're honest. I want to shoot less of this. But I want to give the disclaimer. If this is the stuff that you love to shoot, that's awesome, because that's your truth, right? I'm not going to tell you what your thing should be. That's up to you. I think that I'm just going to talk about a few different things here, but why do we love creativity? Well, I think creativity is a way to find ourselves. I think a lot of us are lost a little bit, and we bounce around and we try to figure out that thing that really makes us excited in life. And what a win when you find it. What a tremendous win. I think when you go out, shoot what's important to you. And if you're feeling a little bit lost and a little bit uncertain about what is the next step to take in your journey, if you feel like, okay, that person has it figured out, and that person has it figured out, and Dave has it figured out, let me assure you, none of us have it figured out, right? I bet you almost everyone in this room has uncertainty about what their creative journey should be, about what their next step is, about how to get better in this. And I really believe in this too. That the community that comes out of photography is more important than the images we shoot. It really is. The greatest gift photography has given me over the years is the people that I've met along the way, truly. I know, again, so many of the people in this room right now, and just wonderful, wonderful humans that I've come across over the years. 40 years from now, if I'm still living, I know I'm not going to care about the images, any specific ones, but I am going to care about all the relationships and all the encounters and experiences that I've had along the way. So just when I really think about that, the why, what's important to me, why do I love picking up the camera? Well, light is important to me. And I don't just mean light in terms of here's this God beam of light coming from the clouds. I just mean the light of the world, right? I really do find the world a beautiful place, and to be able to be so fortunate to go out and document it means a lot to me. I love capturing joy. I love capturing happiness. I love capturing, maybe the right term might be positive human interactions. There's people out there that love shooting sorrow or war or famine or darker subjects. And we need those people in the world. This is what I'm drawn to. I love shooting hope. Most of my images, if you look across my whole portfolio of work, you're not going to see a lot of dark stuff in there, to be quite honest. I like shooting beauty. It's always kind of been the mantra on my website, seeking the beauty of the world, something like that, blah, blah, blah. You write the 2-line biography that you share with people. I love people. I love photographing people and their stories. I really firmly believe that we're all in this world more similar than we are different, and I love to be able to showcase that through the images I can take. And I really believe this. I think we're on a journey with very limited steps. We don't know when that last step is going to be, and we got to make the most of it while we're here. And I know our cameras may not be changing the world. They aren't. But they do change our worlds positively. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because so many people don't find that thing in life that they love. We here in this room have found something that we love, and I think we got to take advantage of that. Family, so important to me. It's such a topic of my photography always. I keep going back to it. And going back to that Diane Arbus quote, right? What did she say again? That she firmly believes that people would not see certain things in the world if she did not photograph them. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that we could do, is document our world, because no one else is going to do it for you. I'm going to show you a little bit of my world. There's just a quick little 3-minute slideshow, and then I'm going to go a bit into the how, just some concepts and things that maybe you can consider when you're out there shooting if you need a little bit of inspiration or you want to look at your world in a slightly different way. Thank you. That's a little my world around me. Those are just some of the things I've seen along the way. I just realized I feel like Bob Barker with this thing. Neil Zeller, come on down. Okay, so seeing your world more effectively. I'm just going to go through maybe 10 different things, concepts, ideas, some of the stuff you definitely know, but I think it's good to be reminded of some of the stuff every once in a while. I think one of the greatest ways we can document the world around us is to immerse ourselves in it, or to immerse ourselves in a subject matter even. If there's something that you have in mind that you want to photograph, whether it's a place that's very special to you, right? Maybe it's a campsite that you go to quite often, or maybe it's your backyard or a park around you, or a theme, more like, yeah, I'm going to photograph my grandparents or my children. Immerse yourself into that. Live, eat, and breathe your chosen subject. I get very obsessive when I lock on certain subjects. I really do. And I tend to, like I said, go hardcore on a subject for 6 months, and then I move on to something else. I have some projects that I shoot over years and years and years, but for me, my most effective way of creating any sort of body of work is to really do this. Focus on it hardcore for the short term. And I find that I always am happy with that process. Stop chasing. I think a lot of us as photographers, we just bounce around so much. Even if we're out there in the mountains shooting one on a particular Saturday or Sunday, we go out and we just drive and we look for something and look for something and look for something. I have found through many years of doing this that the pictures that are most meaningful to me usually come when I slow down and I take the time to just sit and really look at the world around me. And it's amazing what you notice when that happens. Recently, I was in Prince Edward Island, where I live, and I did that. I just kind of took a walk on the beach last week, and I found this rock, and I just sat there. And I sat there for a half hour, and at first I was like, there's nothing to photograph here. It's quite boring. But it's amazing, even after 10 minutes, how you just start seeing things, right? It could be something far off in the distance. It could be something close. It could be something macro, just an interesting line or a pattern. But you start seeing the world more when you slow down. Chase more. I'm going to totally contradict myself here. What do I mean by chasing more? Well, there's always that term in photography, chasing light. I see so often, like especially when I lead workshop groups or whatever, where you go out to a scene and everyone just kind of walks to one place and they set up and they don't move. And then you get the oddball person who's like way the heck down the lake shore or down on their knees under a log. And you're like, what is that weirdo doing? But then you realize that there's something magical in that spot. That person has sought something different than everyone else. Actually, a funny example, I see Neil Bates right here. Neil Bates came with me to the Yukon, I think back in 2016, and around then, and we had gone to this lake, and everyone did that. There was a lot of people just set up on the shore, and Neil was a bloody kilometer down the lake shore. And you walk up to him, and Neil, how you doing? Good. What are you creating? I don't know. But then he'll show it to you afterwards, and just like blew our minds that it was so different and so unique from everyone else. He embodied this. He chased his own thing. Take the time to learn the tools and take it in chunks. What do I mean by this? Photography is intimidating. There's a lot to learn. There's so many different concepts. Even just the idea of exposure, composition, different creative tools. That's one huge chunk. But then learning your actual camera and the buttons and dials, there's so much of it. And people get overwhelmed by that and they get frustrated by that. I think one of the best ways you can learn photography is to really chunk it down. Just take one of those things, focus on it for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then move on to the next thing. I've used this example before, but I'm going to use it again. I'm learning guitar right now. I'm now like 7 years into my journey. And I found it overwhelming at first because you just see masterful guitar players and they just pick it up and it's like an extension of themselves. And I've realized in my own process learning guitar that I can't learn it all at once. I really do have to just pick one little chunk. I got to learn this chord, or I got to learn this strumming pattern, or I got to learn the fretboard, right? There's all these little components to learning anything. And I think the best way to learn anything is to just really focus on one chunk of it and don't get frustrated over the fact that you don't know the whole. Cross-pollinate. What do I mean by that? I mean that I think sometimes we as photographers make the mistake of perhaps sticking to one genre and just like staying very tightly in that box. I really believe that if you allow yourself to go try something different, go try shooting a portrait, even if people intimidate you. Shoot a weird abstract picture. Go shoot a landscape if you're a portrait photographer. Being a landscape photographer has helped immensely my environmental portraiture photographs. Being a portrait photographer, I think, has actually allowed me to understand light and shadow more in the landscape side. It really has. I think the cross-pollination and the fact that I try a little bit of everything has been a big part of my journey over the years. This is probably one of the biggest ways I learn, is by studying the work of the people that I love. The images that I love, I want to understand why I love them. I love studying them. I love analyzing them. If there's a picture by Steve McCurry or Annie Leibovitz or Joe McNally or Sebastião Salgado or Diane Arbus when I was standing in that exhibition yesterday, there's a few photographs there that really stood out to me. And I stood in front of them for a long time, just thinking about them. Why does this impact me? What do I love about this photograph? And I think if we all do that, worry less about just bouncing around and just really take the time to think about the photographs that impact you, you're going to learn a lot from that process. This thing, anyone who's coming on the photo walk with me later might find yourself in this. And I'm sure you've done this before, but it really is a tremendous way to learn when you restrict yourself. What do I mean by that? Well, we have these big bags of gear with all these lenses, all these tools, filters, so many choices out there, and that can be overwhelming, and I think that's actually sometimes a detriment to actually getting better. I love going out with one set of parameters, and that could be, I'm just going to shoot black and white today, or I'm going to just shoot with a 30mm lens without even a camera bag, really. I'm just going to go out and walk with that and see what I see. The result of that is you get to really know that one parameter that you're focusing on. I once gave myself a restriction challenge to shoot black and white for months on end. And I mean, I deviated from that a little bit, but I mainly shot black and white for months on end. And out of that, I feel like my understanding of black and white photography, I basically packed like 10 years of just going and doing it here, there, very sporadically. Into that 4-month period, I learned way more in such a short time than I would have otherwise. Turn the results of your restriction challenges into projects. Try doing a restriction challenge sometime and just see if something comes out of that. That whole black and white thing that I talked about, that 4 months changed my world. The body of work that I produced in that 4 months ended up being a big part of this book that came out. This book wouldn't have come out, Tones of Grace, which is all about black and white photography. 10 years ago, I never would have considered myself a black and white photographer, period. And now I was able to have a collection of black and white photographs out there. This too, once you get comfortable in anything, blow it all up. I hate being too comfortable in photography, I really do, because I love learning. I really do love learning, and I love challenging myself in new ways. My way of blowing things up right now is I feel like the one thing that, well, there's many things, but the one thing right now that I'm focusing on that I know I'm not that great at is street photography. I've never really done that in my career much, up until the last year or two. And that's really what I want to focus on. I'm going to blow up my comfort level and step out of my comfort level and go out there and shoot something different. Learn what you hate. And I mean this in two ways. One, it's sometimes the most frustrating things that are the most important for us to learn, right? We put it off forever. But also, realize what you hate in photography and just don't do it, right? If you really hate the idea of sunrise and getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, don't do it. There's many other things you can do out there. So why do we do what we do? Kind of bring this full circle. Because I think we can't not do it. Again, every single person in this room, you have a story to tell. And maybe your story is to shoot weird abstracts. Maybe your story is to document in black and white your family. Maybe your thing is to shoot an area of the world that you think deserves attention. Maybe it needs environmental protection. We all have different stories to tell, and I think it's really imperative that we do something with this gift and this privilege that we have to be able to do photography. And at the end of the day, though, I always come back to this. The journey is more important than the images. I really believe that. Don't hate this journey. Don't lose yourself in the frustration of it. Don't allow yourself to be brought down by what you see other people doing or what they say. You got to love it for you. right? You got to find that thing that you love doing so that you do more of it. And at the end of the day, when you look back upon everything that you've made, I can pretty much guarantee you that you too will not care too much about any singular image, right? But you're going to hopefully think about this journey that you took in photography and remember it fondly. Hopefully it gave you purpose. Hopefully it gave you a reason to go outside into the world around you to shoot more, to see, to observe, and to really soak up the world around us. I love this quote. It's from a Canadian band called the Strumbellas. I don't want a never-ending life. I just want to be alive while I'm here. I love that. I want to be alive while I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. And Evelyn, do we have question time, I guess, if anyone has any questions?
Yeah, there's been a couple questions online, so we'll do a couple of those first, and then we'll get you guys to ask questions. So the first one I have here is from Sheila. Is Dave's favorite processing black and white? Asking based on your last presentation, which was also circled around your book, Tones of Grace.
Is my favorite processing black and white? Well, I think, again, the whole thing, like where I shift my worlds a lot. I would say 50% of my world is black and white and monochrome photography. And I have, now I've talked about this before, but one approach that I changed maybe about 5-6 years ago when I kind of did that restriction assignment in black and white to really learn black and white is even just by the process of shooting in black and white, turning your camera into monochromatic mode and going out and experiencing the world around you and seeing in tones, rather than taking a color photograph into Lightroom or Photoshop and just trying to see if it will look good in black and white. That step really changed my world in black and white photography. And I love doing that. So roundabout way of saying, yes, I would say 50% of the time I'm black and white these days, maybe even a bit more, 60%.
All right, and then one question here from Jackie. What is your favorite lens or lenses that you use?
Ooh.
Besides your new
Gosh.
one, maybe.
I have so many favorites, and the reason I have so many favorites is because I shoot many genres. I have favorites in different genres. My favorite portrait lens tends to be either the Sigma 40 art or the Sigma 80 millimeter art. I love the 40 millimeter because I shoot a lot of environmental portraiture, and I just feel like it's a beautiful perspective for that. And I find the 85 is a great kind of closer up in a person's face kind of lens. Landscape photography, I used to be a wide angle lens photographer, 14 to 24, 16 to 35, that range. But I really find that my happy place now in landscape photography is more in that 100 to 200 millimeter range. Like I love looking for scenes within scenes. So I use the 135 prime, and I love the 70 to 200 just for the versatility that it gives me.
Fantastic. And one more from online. Nick asks, have you ever had an experience while photographing that has scared you?
As a matter of fact, I have.
Oh, good plug.
I've got a book called The Art of Misadventure, which has a lot of scary experiences in it. And I don't go out and seek scary experiences, and I consider myself as a very safe person. But just stuff happens along the ways. I've been on top of a telephone pole with 3 polar bears under me. I've been in the desert in Namibia, kind of out of water and not thinking I'm going to make it. Stuff has happened. So yes.
Perfect. Well, let's get to a few in-store questions here, and if you don't mind just repeating the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone?
No questions. Oh.
Yes.
I like very much what you said, but what do you do for a living? How do you support your family?
So the question was, what do I do for a living? How do I support my family? So I've been a full-time photographer since 2008. So I do photography for a living, and that's a really great question because it's hard to make a living as a photographer. So I find how do I support my family is by doing many different things in photography. So I still do a lot of commercial photography work. In fact, just 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, I was shooting a project for the PEI government. I shoot portrait sessions still. I sell a lot of stock images to publications and organizations. I still shoot the odd wedding. I'm actually flying up to Northwest Territories on Thursday to shoot a wedding. So I have a very diverse, and I teach photography a lot too, and I kind of have a travel photography company. So a little bit of everything. And I find that's the only way I can make a living, right? Any one of those might not support me, but by doing all of them, it does. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Do I need permission to what? Do you need permission to get landscape photographs? That's the question. I think it depends where you are, right? There's many places, public places, that you're allowed to go out and photograph without permission. There are very much places, though, that I love going to in the world where it is on private land or it is not so public. And so I think you just have to be careful and respectful. I think a lot of people do make the mistake of maybe going into private places without getting permission of.
Never stopped on private land. When I took a picture and highways and center and buildings, why need a permission?
Okay. Yeah, so the follow-up to that was, so sometimes he stops on highways and takes photographs of buildings and such, and do you need permission for that? Well, technically, if you're selling anything commercially in photography, you should have a property release for any building that belongs to somebody else, and some people get very anal about that. I think if you're just photographing just for yourself or to put on your social media, et cetera, I wouldn't worry too much about getting permission for every building you photograph, but definitely if you're looking to sell something commercially. And I might not be the best person to ask about the legalities. I'm not a lawyer, so I just want to give that disclaimer. Robert?
Dave, how did COVID affect both your workflow and your creativity?
How did COVID affect my workflow and my creativity? Well, like everyone else here, that was quite a shocker, right? Like I'm a person who loves being out in the world, and I love travel, and I love just interacting with people. And then all of a sudden for 2 years, you find that a lot of the stuff that you did do, you can't do. But I think like with anything in life, you just have to look at a situation and then figure out how am I gonna make the best of it. I sat there depressed like everyone else for a month, and then I got bored of being depressed, right? And I was like, what am I gonna do? And there's things that I could do. And if that meant that I didn't photograph people as much and I went into just the parks and area around me and shot more landscapes. Or I shot a series of black and white self-portraits with a weird black cowboy hat kind of thing that I had. And it was fun. It just challenged my creativity in different ways. So yeah, it was a big shakeup. And to try to make a living, especially in that first year of COVID, was tough, right? You had to get very creative, but managed to survive, knock on wood. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Right.
Evelyn.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you again for such a wonderful presentation. It was very inspirational, even the slideshow with the music. I know a lot of people online really enjoyed that as well. So really appreciate it. And Danny Lee from Sigma Canada, I just wanted to say a few words before we wrap up the live stream here.
Sounds great. Thanks everybody for coming out on behalf of Sigma Canada. You know, it's been a few years since we've had Dave do a live presentation in Alberta, back to 2018, 2019. So we'd love to see him out again, you know, hopefully sooner than later. And thank you to Evelyn and everybody at the Camera Store for hosting this event. Excellent presentation. Give it up for Dave, everybody.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Evelyn. And just again, thank everyone here for giving up a little bit of your weekend to come on out and hear me blab.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, and you can hold it. So I'm just going to wrap up the live stream and say thanks again for all of our viewers for tuning in from at home. Let us know what you think about having the live stream option if you're not able to come in or you're tuning in from abroad. We had lots of people from all over the place tune in today, Dave, so that's really great to see. And so until next time, we'll catch all of our live stream people again soon. And for all of you in store here, I just have a few more instructions as soon as we cut the air. Thanks so much, guys.